Resource Economics. Hello, I'm Lovell Jarvis, Professor Emeritus of Agricultural and Resource Economics at UC Davis, and the Executive Director of the UC Davis Chile Center, an international research center located in Santiago, Chile, and part of UC Davis Global Affairs. I'm delighted to be with you to moderate this program, which is part of an ongoing series hosted by the UC Davis Office of Global Affairs to share knowledge among UC Davis faculty and external experts on topics of global importance. We have an exciting issue to discuss today: conservation and development in our lakes, lessons from Lake Tahoe and the North Patagonian Lake District, which is, needless to say, in Chile. We also have an excellent panel with great knowledge about both regions and the problems they face. The topic basically is, how can we develop truly beautiful lake resources in a way that brings benefits to homeowners and tourists, employees and business ventures, and also saves and sustains these resources for generations to come. This would be a hard problem even without climate change, and much harder with. As background, governments, homeowners, environmentalists, and businesses fought for more than 50 years before agreeing to create a regulatory framework for Lake Tahoe. 3 legal cases from that battle reached the US Supreme Court and actually played a significant role in determining environmental law in the United States. The regulatory framework that resulted from these battles is now doing a very good job preserving that watershed and the lake, despite its nearly 25 million visitors a year. The astoundingly beautiful Chilean Lake District has 23 lakes, not just one, and development there is really just getting started. There's a great deal to be done. We want to talk about what lessons from this do we learn from the old efforts and the new efforts. I want to note that this event is being recorded, and the video will be posted afterwards on the Global Affairs website. Please also note that after the discussion among the panelists, I will open discussion to questions and answers from the audience. You can begin to submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen at any time. Now let me introduce our panel. They are Olga Barbosa, Head, Southern Macro Zone Regional Secretariat, SEREMI, Chilean Ministry of Science, Technology, Knowledge, and Innovation. Olga holds a PhD in ecology and has been president of the Chilean Ecological Society. Ángela de Lorenzo, founder and director of strategy, Fundación Chile Lagos Limpios, founding partner at Land Arquitectos in Santiago, and a board member of the Chilean Architects Association. Jeff Schlado, professor of civil and environmental engineering, UC Davis, director of the Tahoe Environmental Research Center, and also science director, Fundación Chile Lagos Limpios. Sebastián Vicuña, director, Centro de Cambio Global, Center for Global Change, and associate director of hydraulic and environmental engineering, Pontificia Universidad Catolica de Chile. I want to thank each of you for being with us today. It's really a great pleasure. To start the conversation, I'd like to ask each of you to make a few opening comments about how you view past and present efforts to preserve Tahoe and the Chilean Lake Districts. I'm going to start with Olga Barbosa. Olga, could you please give us your thoughts on this question? Thank you. You need to unmute. I think you're muted.
No. Something happened. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. Sorry, thank you too for introducing myself. I want to thank everybody for inviting me to share these experiences and learn about the respectful care that we should have for our environmental landscapes. We are a very diverse country. You are too, so I think we have a lot to learn together. And I hope that my experience as a researcher, as you said, and currently in this government position will be useful for this discussion. So, well, my first thought about this question is that each time we arrive somewhere, we make changes. And this has been for a long time, European settlement and over. And those patterns have not changed a lot, to be honest. So the good thing here is that although we have made, you know, huge changes to our lakes and environment in general, well, we know now that we can make some efforts to, and that is what we have seen in Lake Tahoe, that you can really, you know, get back to not at the original level that we had at but you can make changes. So I wanted to say that the first thing to do, and I think that the big challenge that we embrace has to do first with embracing change, as we were talking about. You know, we are in a context of global change, not only climate change. So embracing change so that we can really, you know, develop strategies that involve change, and then something very important, which is conciliating views. Because as long as we continue envisioning, you know, on one extreme, the approaches of conservation, for example, and in the other extreme, production, we will never find workable solutions, for example, for climate change adaptation, but also solutions that have to do with the fact that we need to settle somewhere and then that we generate impacts. Also, I think we need to move over on accepting and being responsible that we do have enough science, knowledge, and technology to make changes. Usually, as scientists, we used to say, you know, we need more science. And while we say we do need more science, so we need more, you know, budget for science, things are moving. So we really need to, you know, be you know, critical and, you know, thoughtful about that we do have tools to make changes now, irrespective of, you know, more science than we know. We would need, you know, for better, but we have the tools to make changes now. And then once we have these, you know, tools, we also need to get that knowledge and technology, not only for governments and the regulatory, you know, institutions, but also very importantly to people and organizations. And here we're going to have, we're going to hear a lot about like Fundación Chile Limpios, which is a great example, you know, of empowering with knowledge and using it from the civil society. We need to learn, especially also, and maybe we will talk about that later, how to transfer that knowledge. Nobody has really, you know, the great key of knowing what happens when we create knowledge, when we have all the science and technology, and we tend to see that things don't flow in the direct correction, in the direct direction. So I think that's part of what we need to, you know, exchange between these two examples, between these two regions. How that's part of science, in fact. You know? How we can be better, you know, on transferring the knowledge so that that can be used to make better decisions. That's a big thing that I think we need to work out. So I would say that to begin.
Well, thank you. Thanks very, very much. Angela, let me turn the next question, or the same question, to you.
Okay. Thanks too, well, for the introduction, and Olga for your comments. I agree on everything you mentioned. Very aligned with our work in Chile with Limpios, and well, good morning to everyone too, and thanks to UC Davis for inviting us as Chile with Limpios to participate on this great conversation about this very, very important topic. So I believe that one common denominator along the different efforts that regard water management and watershed management, when you look back to the last 30 or 40 years, when you start looking into what has been done in a way, has been like this fragmented vision toward water resource issue. Fragmented both from a geographic perspective, but also from a stakeholders management perspective, which has resulted in a lack of view, for what I believe, on watersheds as systems. And also from an institutional point of view, we have today multiple agencies, multiple sectors that overlap with different objectives over same landscape. And I think this is where somehow relates with what Olga was also saying, mentioning about don't having a vision, you know, because having this multiple efforts with multiple agencies makes very difficult to coordinate efforts and establish a common vision for both preserving the resource and ensuring development. And well, and besides that, there's, I think, you can see specific efforts from the different sectors. You can see efforts from the public sector, for example, the recent national plan for watershed protection here in Chile. And there's many private efforts that have achieved protecting water bodies. There's also a lot of efforts from the academic sector. As Olga was saying, there's a lot of information regarding data collection, and also academics that have been working on elaborating management strategies for watersheds and water bodies. And we in Chile, we have been working with different sectors and in different areas. We even have a project with UC Davis Chile today, research projects in the lakes area. And recently, I think we have seen it, beside this independent efforts, we are starting to see collaborative efforts. And I think that's pretty key. I think that's the key. These new efforts that are combining public, private, and academic efforts linked to a watershed area, to its geographic areas in a much more efficient way that can set models to establish effective governance that can protect these water bodies. There's, for example, project of Fundación Chile that I'm not going to go into detail. This NGO here in Chile that is developing a governance program for some watersheds that I think will be very valuable in terms of being transferred to other watersheds. And we in Chile with Limpios really believe that this is the way of integrating these fragmented views that have been the tone in a way in our history into an integrated way of looking into the landscape and the people who are there, and establishing a culture and a vision that enable us to both protect the resource and have a thriving economy and culture. So yeah, I think that will say it for now, so I don't extend more than my 3 minutes.
Okay, Angela, thanks very much. Jeff, we'll turn to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you too, and it's a pleasure to be here. Interesting to note.
They told us Zoom was going to be difficult today, and I noticed that everybody seems to be just perfect until it's their time to talk, and then suddenly the Zoom begins to freeze up.
Oh.
Go ahead, sorry. Start again. Thanks.
As I said, it's a pleasure to be here. It's interesting, in the Lake Tahoe, for the bulk of the 20th century, didn't really have an environmental problem. So it's only been the last 60 years where what we consider to be the Tahoe challenge, the Tahoe problem, has really emerged. And what really triggered that was the arrival of people, more and more people, less so the permanent residents there, and more, or at least in large part, the number of visitors who came every year, both winter and summer. So in a way, this is I think, part of the challenge for the Chilean Lake District. And just to put it in context, Lake Tahoe is a very large lake, extremely large lake, but it's the same size as Lago Yanquihue. And then there are 22 other lakes in northern Patagonia that all face the same challenge. So the challenge has to do with people and the impact people have on the lakes. So what's happened at Lake Tahoe is a problem possibly of our own making. And everything that has been done and attempted was done with the best of intentions. Some of it has worked really well. Some of it has worked not so well. And I think what's great about this collaboration, this partnership with the northern Patagonian lakes is not that Tahoe has the solutions. What Tahoe has is the experience of what worked for us and what didn't work for us. And this is what Chile and the regions down there, I guess, should be aware of. You clearly don't want to repeat the mistakes that were made here. You want to look and build on the things that did work, but adapt them for Chilean conditions. Two very different countries, different cultures, a different time when Tahoe was embarking on development and growth. Climate change was exerting a minimal influence. Now Chile has a lot of development pressures, and climate change is a major factor. So it's very exciting for me to be working with all of you in Chile, and I think the opportunity is for us to share with you what we've learned. I'm sure in the process we're going to learn a lot from these 23 lakes that will help us at Tahoe as well. That's it.
Jeff, thanks for it. Sebastian.
Well, thank you everybody for the invitation. Thank you too for inviting me for this conversation. I wanted to give a couple of insights and numbers, and I guess some information to give a little bit of a context of what's happening on this northern Patagonia region, which will resonate with what Jeff was just saying. In terms of global change, it's a large region, but if we look at the northern part of that region, the Tahoe Basin, where the Eureka lake is located, for example, we've seen impressive changes in land use. For example, a 40% increase in land use for cities and urban settlements, and like at 80% an increase on forest plantation, exotic forest plantation, which is an important issue in areas like this. So global change is happening and making an impact on not just the land use, but also climate and hydrology. Precipitation has been reduced by almost like 100 millimeters per decade in some of the stations. So it's a region that has been changing very quickly. It's also a region that we can think of it as the border of the more pristine areas that are in the southern part of the country and the more densely populated areas in the central and northern part of the country. So obviously this development impacts many aspects of the environment. And on the other side, we have been in Chile slow to develop the tools that are needed to compensate or accommodate these changes. The most critical tool that we are using now is the setting of these water quality standards, the secondary water quality standards. In Chile, we have only 5 of those standards, and we have 100 basins. And it takes like 10 years, the way we're doing those standards, to come up with a plan, a decontamination plan. So The first one being at the Eureka Basin, which I think is a very similar also basin and a lake to the Tahoe case, with the type of activities that are around the lake. So we need to move faster in the development of these tools, in also the way science is included in the monitoring and the learning in the implementation of this type of tools. And I'm sure we can learn a lot from the Tahoe experience and the California experience in that regards. If it takes 10 years to come up with one decontamination plan for one basin, one lake, it will take obviously much longer than the pace that global change is affecting this region to come up with decent tools to ameliorate these effects. So it's a region that is changing very quickly, and there is a lot of evidence on that. And there is need to tools that had to be developed much more quickly that they have been developed in the recent past, in Chile at least.
Sebastian, great. Really interesting to set the stage in this way. Let me ask then this second question, and taking up on what you have just said, and what Jeff was mentioning about what's happened in Tahoe. Obviously, managing lakes well requires good information. It also requires good policy instruments that can be exercised by government to control activities in the lake that are considered damaging to the ecosystem quality. What types of information and policy instruments are most needed in the 23 northern Patagonia lakes and their watersheds? This is something obviously which has started. Where should we start? What do we need first? And I think, given that Lake Tahoe has been engaged in this for a long time, I'm going to ask Jeff to start on that, to sort of at least give an indication of what he thinks, given what has happened in Lake Tahoe. Jeff.
Well, probably the first thing is to have political leadership that is open to the input of science. And we've been fortunate at Tahoe that we have that. Lake Tahoe is on the border of two states, California and Nevada, and both states from the outset have been very receptive to what science can provide, the information. Scientists, on the other hand, have to be very, humble and realize that political decisions are not purely made on the basis of science. There are a whole range of considerations that politicians and administrators have to base their decisions on. So from that point of view, we have, I guess, tried to not be advocates of what needs to be done, more to be seen as brokers, as providing the information that is always incomplete, the conclusion that is always in our work is needed. All the answers. As soon as we, actually very often with research, what comes about is not the precise answer a politician or a governor or a mayor would want, but it's actually a better question. The question gets constantly refined. But I think without basing actions, whether it's land use actions or what could be discharged into the lake without taking into account the science, then I think all these lakes, this region really risks losing something very special that it has, something that it's not going to have too many chances to correct. If bad decisions are made today, basically, let's say poor development choices, ignoring the effect of climate change or how this new land use will impact the lake, you can't undo that in 20 years. You can't reverse deforestation. You can't reverse intensive agriculture in a location where it's not suitable for the lake health. So I think this marriage between policymakers and science and an openness between both groups is critical.
Angela, let me ask you for your thoughts on this. I'm particularly interested in this question of how one marries all the policymakers and the science, and you're trying to do both.
Yeah, no, I think, well, what Jeff was mentioning is it's key, and also it relates to timing. You know, like there's a government's times and objectives that are usually oriented on a short period of time, and then we have this kind of landscape issues that are not solved in 4 years. You need to have a vision 50, 100 years forward, plus the additional challenges that add climate change. So I think that marriage in the long term, it's really important for both to make things happen, but also to have this long-term view that this is not something that can stop with the next, you know, the government that is by specific time. So I think that is a general challenge that we have in everything that relates to land planning, like making those two things coordinated and work together, and somehow, yeah. So and related to data itself, I think one thing we need to improve here in Chile, compared, for example, with California, is that we don't have enough. We have data. I don't think we have enough for the lake still, but also it's not easy for public access. You know, we really need to integrate the existing data. There's a lot of data in the public sector, private academia, but it's not really easy available for different purposes. And which is more important, I think, many times it's not really validated by the different stakeholders when it comes to decision making, because as Olga was saying at the beginning, I think the point of having all this data is actually to transfer it to decision makers and making new practice happen. So for instance, in the contamination plan that Sebastian was mentioning, they are suffering the consequences of developing this project, the contamination plan, with data that is not of common agreement between different stakeholders. So this fact makes the results of this contamination plan, the first result, really weak, and I think it makes it difficult to continue supporting future process regarding planning and regulation. So I really, in Chile, we're really driven, I think, to gather the relevant data, asking the right questions, and validate it with the key stakeholders within the watersheds we're working on, and independently that there's actions that can and need to be taken today. As Sebastian was also saying, we have not, things are happening really fast here, and there's a lot of things that we can start doing right now. So that's something that we need to push for happen too. And I think one more thing that I would like to mention that I think is really key when it comes to policy instruments and land planning efforts in general, that it's really key to understand the benefits of and synergies that results from looking this North Patagonian lakes region as a broader territorial scale, like this piece of the strategic area in a way for the country. Maybe because you have mentioned it all the time, the 23 lakes, you know, that are like linked together, but sometimes here in Chile we forget about that. We start looking into specific cases and we forget that this area is 30% of the Chilean freshwater mirror, and so it has a relevance at a national level, and both as an interconnected ecosystem, and also if you look at this as this broader area working together, it has much more advantages to compete with other regions in Chile and metropolitan areas, for example, that if you look or try to make efforts lake by lake. So I think this vision of looking at these 23 Patagonian lakes as a whole region, it's something that we here in Chile is not that obvious, and we really need to push in terms of policy making, and I think it will also make things faster because there's a lot of synergies and lessons to be learned from Tahoe and between all these 23 lakes too. So I think that's very key to promote new standards, practices, and regulations, both in the short term and in the long term.
Angela, thanks. Before I turn to Olga, let me just mention that for any of you who might have joined us late, we really welcome questions and answers. At the bottom of the Zoom page, there's a Q&A button. And if you would submit your questions to the panelists, we'd be delighted to pass those on to them and have comments. One of the things that I was just thinking as Angela was talking, with climate change, we see climate obviously heating up in the Central Valley, particularly in the northern part of Chile's Central Valley. And at least it seems to me every time I visit the Lake District, I'm just stunned by how, one, by how large it is, and secondly, by how beautiful it is. And it would not surprise me over the next 20 years as infrastructure improves, that you have a large number of people moving into the Lake District, not as tourists, but as permanent residents. An area that traditionally has not really been a residential area, has been a more tourist area, but I think it could easily become a residential area. And that obviously would put far greater pressure on the resources that are there. So anyway, you might think on that and we'll come back to that. But Olga, let me turn to you now for your thoughts. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the other comments. Now I have nothing to say. That's the advantage of being at the end, you see.
Yes.
Well, so I'm trying to I am trying to order my ideas. I would say that we need I agree with what it has been said, and also I would add something that mentioned Sebastian, that we need, you know, and also Angela, we need to, that these national regulations and policies talk and combine, you know, the urban development and the forest plantation or agricultural development. We see these, you know, uncoordinated regulations very easily, for example, in Valparaiso, in the central area of Chile. You know, we have, you know, these big fires that are of exotic plantations that get into the city, and because both policies don't talk. Or we see also this here in Valdivia, when we see how the, you know, urban development goes over, you know, wetlands. And again, there's like no conversation between these policies. So I think one of the problems is because that when we get these national policies, Chile is very diverse. Therefore, they are kind of very general, but try to be specific in some areas. But it's very difficult that they will, you know, tend to, you know, correct the problem or regulate in a more efficient way. So I am a big fan of subnational policies, which is something important for Chile and very undeveloped, because Chile is a very centralized country. And now that I'm in this position, I am very insistent that we need to, you know, have a more autonomy on making decisions. This is very important, for example, under the pandemic. So with the COVID and all that. So I think we should try to develop, you know, subnational policies that are coordinated between regions, and that's why I think it's a very good plan on talking about this this group of lakes, because we're talking about like a macro zone, like you know, so it's several regions that, as Angela said, you know, take some energy for us and you know, make it's easier to make it more seen by the central government. The other thing that I wanted to say is that, of course, we all agree that governance is key. And now that I'm in this side, and before I would tend to say, well, we need, you know, the government will do something, and we need regulations, like a lot of, you know, top-down instructions. Well, now I can see that it's very important, again, you know, that because we need to focus on developing state policies more than government policies, we need to find a governance model that includes civil society. So that's the only way that we keep policies going in long term, as all of you have been saying. You know, environment is not something that happens in 4 or that will change or not change. You know, well, it can change dramatically in 4 years, but I mean, we need to monitor, we need to do a lot of things that are long term, we need to have a systemic view. So definitely we need to find and work on these governance structures that will tend to be there always. And when you are at the government position, you need to run, you know, taking decisions and making the best with the most, you know, the most informed possible, but as everybody's saying, we know very little about lakes and waters in general, and there are a lot of interests about that. So I think creating these governance structures, and again, Fundación Chile Lagos Limpios and other, you know, organizations that are developing around the Yanquihue Lake, for example, are very important. For example, in Eureka, there's also another, in Eureka, we have, there's a group, although, you know, not directly in the, talking about environmental issues, it's a group that is working on how to change education in terms of sustainability. In terms of sustainable development, and also having a territory identity. So you see, as Angela was saying, we have like 2 levels also: the policy that we need to develop today, but also these new generations or this new way of thinking that it's going to be, you know, very important in the future, and that will, you know, make the change last.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Quite a list of things to work on, huh? Sebastian?
Yes, I you know, I was looking at the Lake Tahoe Environmental Research Center website, and I was reading at the history, and a couple of things struck me when I was reading it, that I think would be interesting messages for what we're discussing today. One is how early it began, the activities and research program and the commitment in the 1960s or 50s. So I don't know, 60 years ago. I was looking at the GDP or per capita in the US at that time. It was $3,000 per capita. We are in 14,000 in Chile now, which is like the US in the 80s. So when somebody says there's no enough resources to start things like this, I think there's a good example there that resources is not a critical issue. It's always a critical issue, but it doesn't need to be a stopping restriction. There will be enough resources if there is commitment and leadership to start something like this. Another interesting thing, and it's what I've learned also from UC Davis, it's the commitment they have and the responsibility in the region. They work on other parts of California, they work on global issues, but they have a very clear commitment on where they are located, and the Sacramento, the broader Sacramento region is where they are doing their work, and when the government needs advice and on any issues, and I've known those are related with water, they will call UC Davis, and no other institution would say, no, UC Davis shouldn't be doing this, because they know that they have a commitment on this, and they have placed this honest broker position which is important as a way of also connecting different stakeholders, civil society, private sector, public sector. The other important thing about establishing research programs like that is like they will create the right questions to use the data. There's a lot of data that is being monitored, and there is impressively very little questions attached to those data, those monitoring programs. One key example is the vast amount of data that we've been collecting from the projects that have gone through environmental impact assessment processes. They are just piling up in databases and paperworks in somewhere, and really no good questions attached to that data that will only come from a research program that has some objectives about how to be using that data. Having a research program like that also, I think could ease the anxiety about having all the perfect information to come up with policies and rules and regulations. If there is trust on a program like that, that establish roadmaps about how we start learning about these systems, and we use the data to learn, and then iteratively we start connecting that with the sources and the policies, I think it's also a good way of getting started with these things. Because if we wait to get the models, the data, all the information that we need to have a perfect policy, it will be too late at that moment. So research programs where the university, local universities or regional universities are committed, it's very important. And I guess it's very important that Olga is here. The Science Ministry has been involved now in a series of committees and programs in water, in climate change, in different aspects. So experiencing this and maybe also making sure that all these policies have a component on science, on a research program, would be another way of having a dent on these issues.
I think it's interesting the links among the comments that you're making, because as Jeff says, it's the politicians who make the decisions, not the researchers. And as Sebastian is saying, you really need science to keep developing the questions that really, in some senses, have to drive the politicians in terms of the decisions they're going to take. Here we have Olga sitting in the hot seat at the present time, trying, along with others, to actually make these decisions. And as she says, often without having as much information as she would like, as much guidance to help make a decision that is scientifically informed and seems reasonable, along with the pressures. I guess what struck me is that when I looked at the history of Lake Tahoe, that as politicians correctly tried to take decisions, they really ran into what I would have said in many cases a buzzsaw of conflict, where individuals on one side, environmentalists and others, wanted decisions to be taken to restrict development of various sort. And obviously individuals who owned property, and whether they wanted to build a house or a hotel or a road or whatever, I mean, to their property, whatever it might be, they resisted the controls that somebody wanted to impose upon them in the purpose of taking care of the important national resource. How are you going to, resolve these issues? Obviously, they're only resolved over time. It's a never-ending issue of this play between government organizers, science, and the private sector. Everybody wants to protect the lakes, but at the same time, nobody really wants their own activity to be restricted. Anybody want to have a desire to go first, or shall I go in some order, or what?
I can go.
Angela, let me ask you.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, Olga, if you want to go, I was saving it. I was trying to save you as a policymaker to go later, but lead off.
I am very conscious of my decisions. So I think, well, this is going to be a bit of a biased response from someone that comes from science. I have seen in this short period and with a lot of movement and changes that science is beginning to have a place. Yeah, this has been very. Sebastian mentioned something about this. Is a very new ministry. Before that, we have not very well organized way of having a voice of science in institutions. But I think there's like a lack of culture of science and knowledge. In Chile, and you can tell me later if this is similar also, because I know it's similar in some places of the United States. Yeah, one of our biggest inequities in our society has to do with the access to knowledge, science, knowledge, technology in general. So it's very difficult when you put a lot of stakeholders together to make decisions, as you were saying. For example, imagine I want to have my second home, and I have a lot of money. However, I can still, not get to a good access to, information, technology, whatever. Or I think, making a home with, certain characteristics, or, pushing the local government so that they will take care, of water, of the watershed. It's going to be very expensive. It's going to be very difficult. On the other hand, if you don't have enough money, or you're not wealthy, you need a home. It doesn't matter where you put your home. If it's over a wetland and it's the only opportunity you have, you are going to take that home. So I would say, what I'm trying to say with this is that I hope that when, hopefully soon, knowledge would be, something more transversal, so that everybody can take better decisions. You may still be getting a home over a wetland if you don't have any other chance, okay? However, there are small changes that sometimes you can make, and we tend to think that they are impossible, or they are very expensive. And my experience working with vineyards and other, and in cities, show that it doesn't need necessarily to be, huge things and very complicated and expensive things when you collaborate with others. So you can collaborate in terms of, science, as we are doing here, but also between, how we call it, colaboración intersectorial, so between secretariats, between ministries. So a lot of things that I do here, I work with the Ministry of so the local secretariat of the Ministry of Infrastructure. And that's key, because they have the money, to change, and they have the projects to change, like all the watershed solutions that are, in the city. Our ministry is not going to have that, those projects. So we need to collaborate. And if they don't have the knowledge, and we don't have the knowledge of how, infrastructure works, infrastructure projects are, developed in cities or in general, then there's not going to be any conversation, and therefore we won't find the solutions that we need now. So Sebastian and Angela and Jeff, so we can't wait for the perfect solution. We need to, begin to move now.
Yeah. We've got 11 minutes left, so let's see, maybe 2 minutes see for each of the last three. Angela.
Yeah, I think, what I was saying, I think lack of knowledge, access it's really key, together with that we have a poor regulation system regarding specifically planning in urban and rural areas. And this adds to a main issue, I think, that we lack of a unified vision for development. There are no agreements or discussions today regarding what kind of environment we want, like what is the standard, you know, in terms of each lake, for example, or this whole lake, of what kind of environment we want today and for the future to build over. So until we don't, I think, agree on that, that's like a really important work to start doing, and it's an ongoing process, but it's really key to make decision making effective and more transversal. And in Chile, Los Limpios, I think the key word has been collaboration, as Olga said, like being able to be an independent agency that we don't have a specific interest in specific lakes or locations. We have been working really hard in articulating the different stakeholders, from the private sector, with the public sector, with the academia, with the individuals, and we have this saying, you know, like we say, that everyone can be a hero without a cape, because we really think that everyone needs to do something, and for that, of course, knowledge is really important but every independent where you're standing, you have a role to play. You can take even a small action. So I think our main work areas have been, in one way, in the short term, promote that people become heroes and start taking small actions in every way they can, you know, and in the long term, being this consistent voice that can go through governments and on time, you know, as Olga was also saying, that it's really important to have a governance from like civil, from the citizenship that stays and has this long-term view and be consistent in that way. So I think that's been our main efforts, like working from somehow bottom up in that way to articulate and coordinate different efforts that needs to be taken with a long-term view that we really need to build them.
Yeah. Sebastian, let me not put you at the end. I'll give you a shot now. What do you think?
Yes. You know, we talked many times too about Sigma, which I think I'm very fan of. Sigma is the California Groundwater Management Act. This is a new thing that came out of the last drought, the big drought in California, which I think has some of the key elements of what I think would be a good relationship between science, private sector, public policies in several ways. One is, like, I guess the first thing is to commit and to agree on a set of objectives, you know, long-term objectives about what is a desired state of a system, and understand which would be a state which is not accommodating these desires. After that, if you have agreed on that instead of the goals, the long-term goals, you can set up a framework in which the state or the public sector doesn't intervene in every action, because it's impossible and they don't also have all the information, but let the private sector and the science to collaborate in an ongoing process where they know at the end, if that they are not fulfilling these objectives, the state will have to come and change the rules. In the Groundwater Management Act in California, that means curtailing some of the groundwater rights, and knowing that would be the result of a poor management, considering the objectives, I think is a good way of making sure that the management works fine. So systems like that, in which you agreed on goals and a monitoring and research process, but letting then the private sector do their own stuff in terms of accommodating their actions for these goals, I think is a good way of trying to link these processes.
I think that's a very interesting idea. I guess the only thing I would add to that is that my sense from Sigma is that once the private sector has agreed on a set of objectives, they need some sort of control. I guess I'm concerned, before I go back to Jeff, that, as he said, if somebody makes a decision now that is a bad decision, you live with it for a very long period of time. So it's hard to, I mean, at one level, just say, well, go ahead and make decisions. And if you don't do it right, then the state steps in. Seems that, I mean, there has to be, I mean, I really like your point on an agreement about objectives that comes about both from the private sector and from the public sector, from discourse, from discussions, that then seems to me has to lead with some sort of criteria governing actual behavior by individuals. I mean, I really like the idea of Zinkman. I had never thought about that, to be honest, as a method of operating. But Jeff, let me, yeah, you know about all this stuff. Yeah. What do you think?
You'd be surprised. Yeah, I do want to build on that and also touch on something that Olga mentioned. And I share with Olga this impatience. Let's do something because time is slipping. But one of the things that came to light sort of in a previous lifetime, working on the California Bay Delta system, was this notion of reversibility. Sometimes as you evaluate projects and set your priorities, it's really important to bear reversibility in mind, because based on all the scientific uncertainties and all the uncertainties, period, sometimes you make a decision with the best of intentions, the best available science, and it has irreversible effects and you can't change them. So I think that's something we have to build into the process. I also wanted to amplify something Angela said, and that is, and I guess it goes to what Olga was saying as well about access to science and knowledge and technology and things like that. One of the things that Chile Lagos Limpios is working on, I think very diligently and successfully, is trying to build stakeholder engagement. There are a lot of people who aren't aware of the science, they aren't aware of the different departments and government agencies. We who work in science and in government, we know all the acronyms and the names and what they do, and most people don't. It's just, whether it's in English or in Spanish, it's a jumble of letters and acronyms to them. And I think what Angela and her collaborators are doing in getting people involved in the lakes, whether it's through citizen science efforts, is another way of making them realize what they have and what's at stake, what they might lose if action isn't taken or if the wrong actions are taken. So that's it doesn't seem as rapid as passing a new law or starting a new science program, but it's critical to bring the people of the region along.
Let me open it up to one last question from anybody who would like to make a comment. I just want to say I have thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. I have learned a lot. I think there've been a lot of issues that have been raised that, despite my interest in this, I really hadn't thought about before. So I'm very grateful to the points that you have made. Any last comment? Yeah, Sebastian.
Yes, true, and because there's a question about this, about the impacts of climate change in the region, and I think that there's an important issue there. The impacts are, I talked briefly about, reduction in precipitation. There will be an increase in temperature, and it's a very robust signal among different climate models, and we can think that uses of water, for example, that are dependent on the current state of water availability, which is important in many areas, even though we think it's very wet, they're depending on a certain amount of water that if it's reduced by a little, then it will collapse, like Chiloé, for example, a very wet area, and they have problems with water availability. But in this region, I would be concerned more about the potentially positive impacts of climate change. Increase in temperature, reduction in precipitation would increase the likelihood of having large-scale agriculture in the area, vineyards, orchards, and I see that more of as a threat than the negative impacts of climate change for what we are talking about. I see the agriculture frontier moving south with more infrastructure. If you look at the network of channels, irrigation channels, they all stop at the northern edge of this area. There's very little amount of channels south of there, no reservoirs. So if we start creating solutions to accommodate for those changes, and we don't take into account the irreversibility that Geoff was mentioning, I think I'm more worried about those impacts than really obviously the negative impacts that had to be associated with adaptation measures. I think that's would be a more critical stress and driver for impacts on this region.
Let me just note, we had a question from a panelist asking something that's very important to all of us because we've all had conversations about it, and that is, how do we incorporate in a very positive way, both in governance and in benefits of the development that we hope, the indigenous population, which is very, very important in the region. And we really haven't had any discussion of sort of community development in this conversation. We've really stuck pretty much to the ecosystem, but certainly the human elements are extraordinarily important. And so maybe we'll come back at some point in another webinar to spend a good deal more time on the human environment. Let me thank you very, very much. I think our time is up. It's 10:01, and I appreciate very, very much your being with us and all of the really excellent insights that you provided in the discussion. So thanks, and
thanks to,
thank you too.
Thanks to everyone.
And thanks to everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye. That? We're here.